Dear viewers, in this session, let us discuss about the threats to biodiversity. On March 24, 1900, an young boy in Ohio in the United States shot a bird. What was special about it? Well, it was the last wild passenger pigeon on earth. The bird was never seen again in the wild. In 1914, Martha, the last passenger pigeon in the world, died in Cincinnati Zoo. You can see the stuffed body in the National Museum of Natural History. You might still wonder why we should worry about the extinction of a single bird. The passenger pigeon was not just another bird. It was the most abundant bird ever to have inhabited the planet. In the first half of the 19th century, there were 10 billion of them in huge flocks, some containing more than 2 billion birds. In those days, one could see a migrant flock of passenger pigeons that darkened the sky for 3 full days as they flew past. How did they disappear? Their meat was good to eat, their feathers made good pillows, and their bones became fertilizer. It was easy to shoot them since they moved in such a large flock and nested in long and narrow colonies. Their habitat and breeding grounds were affected as forests were cleared. From the middle of the 19th century, the hunting of passenger pigeons became big business. Traps, shotguns, dynamites, and even artillery were used to kill them in huge numbers. In a few decades, billions of birds perished and the species became extinct. Nature has greater force than education. There is balance in it. Forests reduce stress, improve your moods, and strengthen our immune system. Indians respected nature in their religious beliefs and culture. In olden days, there were no architects in the villages. Before the construction of a house, the head carpenter of the village was consulted to identify the location for the house. He used to chant Sanskrit slogas during the ceremony. In these prayers, before cutting the ground for construction, he asked pardon to the birds who are going to lose their nesting platform due to cutting a few trees for clearing the place, and begged the snakes to go back to their holes because they may be injured during the digging of the ground. With the advent of the industrial and green revolution between the 1930s and the late 1960s, the slogan of cut, burn and kill has been the engine of development. Ruthless destruction of wildlife and a prodigal wastage of natural resources preceded any civilization. Since 1947, river valley projects, mining, agriculture, townships, industries, roads and other similar developmental activities have destroyed a staggering 5.3 million hectares of forest area in India. Effective closed canopy forest in India today is as low as 4%, of which hardly 1% is fully protected. Thus, conservation of the last left forests of the world is the top priority of our conservation efforts today. Forest is the mother of river. So, when the forests die, our drinking water sources too perish. A refocus is needed in our national attention on the fact that forests are essential to our country's biological and economic sustenance. We need to internalize the fact that forests are finite and their destruction will lead to a falling standard of human life. Ancient tribal beliefs and modern scientific conclusions affirm this fact. So, now let us examine what are the important factors that threaten our natural biodiversity resources. Habitat loss and degradation due to various developmental activities. Habitat fragmentation due to national highways, railway lines, etc. passing through the forests. Dams and hydroelectric projects, for example, the Gundiya of Netravati river in Karnataka and the Athirapalli in Kerala. Introduction of non-native species from other countries into our forests. Mining activities going on in the interior of our virgin forests. Tobacco curing that is happening in the outskirts of our forests by taking firewood from the interior of the forest, religious activities that are happening inside our national parks and wildlife sanctuaries, optimum foraging theory and conflict. According to scientists, a tiger should hunt for prey that will provide it sufficient meat or the nutrients with the least possible effort. Cultivated grasses such as paddy and finger millet provide more protein, calcium and sodium than the wild grasses consumed during corresponding season, according to Sukumar, an elephant expert from Indian Institute of Science. Thus, it is very common that wild animals enter into human habitations and cultivations in search of these nutrients. Another important factor that affects our biodiversity is the forest fires. Forest fires initiated by the tourists or even by the forest department staff in order to take revenge on the higher officials. The electric lines passing through forests, beat roads that are constructed by the forest department itself in order to take a watch on the wildlife. Cattle grazing is another important threat to biodiversity. The villagers engage in a process called cooperative grazing, where they will employ a tribal by paying him a meager amount. Hundreds of cattle of the villagers will be taken to the interior of the forest by a tribal every day, and this also helps the villagers in their dung trade. The root of the grazing problem is unabated encroachment of gomalas, the grazing lands, by rich farmer from inside and outside the state of Karnataka into our forests. The spread of foot and mouth disease or the rinderpest disease and anthrax to wild animals from the cattle is another serious threat. National highways passing through the forests fragment them. Ecotourism is the greatest ecocide. With the advent of cash economy, nothing that can be encashed is spared from being exploited. Any tourism comes at a price. Our air, water, vegetation, culture, everything are sold to the highest bidders. Local people and the tribals are denied access to forests. After granting legal protection, the environment is downgraded in the interest of short-term profit maximization. Animals are taken from the wild for various kinds of games. Commercial hunting and poaching are destroying so many of our wildlife. Now, let us look at the impacts of biodiversity loss. Biodiversity loss will affect the livelihood of ecosystem people. Food crops, medicine, textiles, spices, dyes and paper for developed countries come from biodiversity only. The destruction of rainforests will affect carbon dioxide being not absorbed by the trees. Natural climate control mechanisms will be lost. We are at a break point today. Any further forest loss could put us permanently on the eternal treadmill of floods, droughts, famines and diseases. The kind of social unrest that the sub-Saharan Africa is best known for around the world will affect our country also. Biodiversity conservation needs a strong political will. Government spends more money on flood and drought relief than on forest protection. The umbilical connection between healthy forests and water regimes are well known. Politician after short-sighted politician make a beeline for New Delhi to ask for drought relief. Not once did they ask why our nation's once fabled water sources were fast vanishing. The mantra of conservation is lopsided in our country. There is no attention or any policies to conserve lesser known creatures. Large charismatic animals are well protected. Conservation of timber trees gets more attention than other non-timber trees. The need of the hour is a cultural willingness of communities to coexist with wildlife, realizing that a major portion of their original habitats are encroached by us. Cultivated landscapes should become wildlife friendly. Space has to be provided for wildlife outside the natural reserves. Let me conclude this session by quoting two examples of the above cultural willingness of communities to coexist with wildlife. First of all, let us go to the Anamalai Hills of Tamil Nadu. The Anamalai Hills of Tamil Nadu is home to the second largest wild Asian elephant, Elephas maximus population in India. The Valparai Plateau with 220 square kilometer of tea and coffee plantations interspersed with patches of forests and eucalyptus plantations is a fragmented landscape home to several endangered and endemic species of Western Ghats including elephants. Extend rainforest fragments and riparian patches within tea and coffee plantations provide refuges for elephants' use and movements across the plateau into surrounding protected areas. Over the years, about 100 elephants use plantations with consistent interannual movement patterns across the landscape. The Sholayar riverine system flowing through the middle of the plateau is critical for elephants, highlighting the need for developing native vegetation along the river with involvement of local companies to facilitate free passage for elephants and minimize human interactions. There are also 6 major plantations companies, smaller estates and 70,000 people who depend on plantations for their livelihood, indicating imperative for coexistence measures in Anamalai. Encounters with elephants that lead to human deaths and damages by elephants to buildings and food stores cause economic losses and trauma among the local people. Although elephants used the landscapes year round and there were seasonal peaks of conflict incidents, October to February, elephant presence and their duration of stay was not directly related to conflict in Anamalai. Let us also examine the case of Aarey Milk Colony in Mumbai. Over 35 leopards were counted in an area of 140 square kilometer in Mumbai's Sajjai Gandhi National Park and its adjoining areas of Aarey Milk Colony in southwest. This works out to a density of approximately 22 leopards per 100 square kilometer, double the figure for the thick forest of Bhadravati in Karnataka, which has only 11 leopards per 100 square kilometer. A large metropolis with 20,000 people per square kilometer coexisting with one of the highest densities of a big carnivore is an unprecedented situation anywhere in the world. Leopards seem to embody Mumbai's ethos of adaptability and resilience. It wasn't always like this. The leopards of Mumbai suffered a crisis in the early 2000s. They attacked people, killing children and mauling adults. After a lawyer was killed, his colleagues circulated a petition demanding the removal of every leopard from the city. Some demanded that a massive wall be built around the park so that no unauthorized person could enter and no leopard could leave. People living in hamlets inside the forest for generations were maligned for destroying the forest. Wildlife activists went to court demanding the eviction of encroachers, while social activists fought for the rights of people and against eviction. No wall was built to separate humans from leopards. People continue to live in their hamlets within the park, and there are just as many leopards in Mumbai now. Yet, since an attack on a 7-year-old boy in October 2013, no leopard has attacked a human in the past 20 months. This achievement can largely be credited to a proactive forest department and a unique citizen state initiative involving wildlife biologists and a group of dedicated volunteers. No doubt, citizens worry for their pets, children and their own safety. Leopards too pay the price of city life, falling prey to vehicles speeding along the highways around the park. But people and predators live together with little drama. Mumbaiites are role models for citizens of other cities who may have to adjust to wildlife conflicts. Goodbye.